Hello dear friends of Gene Truelove Quilts for You on our YouTube channel. Interesting things happening, unexpected, and I'm very pleased. But first of all, let's give you an update on Maxwell. It's not really great. On a follow-up discussion with the surgeon he said that 98% of the operations that Maxwell has had, the like of which, are successful. Only 2% ever have complications. Yes, the Truelove touch of you-know-what, the Truelove cloud, that would be our dear Maxwell falling into that horrible situation. He's still bleeding and swelling and he's slightly anemic, and the recovery period, the surgeon is pushing back many weeks. But hopefully with lots of sleep and taking it easy, he'll be back soon, hopefully on videos with Gene and I. Well, as you know, Gene has been looking after Maxwell really magnificently, and yet not sewing so much. But I was so pleased to see her in the sewing room making a vision. Excited me very much. This is just one of the squares, which is just astounding. I saw this and was taken aback just how inspiring it is. And she just had to sew something, so I asked her to film one of the processes that go into making such a quilt block as this. And she's done a lot, and they're up on the wall over there. Perhaps she'll put them in a video so you can see them. And I hope you enjoy this. As Gene says, it's a look over my shoulder type of video. Look at what she's doing video. So thank you again for your kindnesses and support and your prayers as you are offering. Please keep Maxwell and my Gene in your thoughts at this time. And last weekend, just a little cheery time while Maxwell was resting and not part of it, I was asked to look after a couple of my grandsons. Had a great day. We went to our Kingdom Hall to begin with, enjoyed our Bible meeting and discussion with friends. Afterwards, brought them back from their particular meeting, 40 minutes drive away, which went just like that because we were having fun talking. That's with our Levi and Alastair. And then the surprise I had in mind for them, and Jean, she didn't know it was going to happen. We bought a fire pit. It's not cast iron, it's steel, painted black steel. It's so adaptable, so much fun. I taught the two boys from my Boy Scout days how to make a quick fire with a little bit of paper, kindling. We made kindling with an axe or chopper, as we call them. We cooked steak, potatoes, etc., and they made their own lunch. They loved it. And ice cream and fruit for afters, as we say in England, or dessert. They had the time of their lives. And we went for a bike ride as well. We're teaching the youngest one in the weeks to come to leave behind his training wheels. So we had a delightful time, and I got to spend 24 hours with them, which was really very enjoyable. Anyway, so keep us in your thoughts and prayers. Bye for now.
This is a very quick overview of the project I'm working on right now. I really was attracted to this pattern here. It's called the Almond Country Beauty Block. This is a New York beauty block with all of the points. You've seen patterns like that. What I'm going to be demonstrating next is how I've made this unit here very quickly. This is not a beginner's project, obviously, although once you get it down, it's not that hard. Trust me, believe me, I haven't done one of these in a while, and it's a bit confusing, but when you break it down, it's really quite easy. This quilt consists of 16 blocks. and they're all different. Well, there's two of the same. Block 5 is the same. But if you can see, this part here that I'm demonstrating, this arc right there, these are all the same. Okay, that's this arc here. This is block 11. That arc that I'm demonstrating next is the same. This unit is the same. That curve and that curve, just different fabrics. This top arc are a little bit different. As you can see on this one, there's 2 pattern 1, 2 pattern 1. The background is always the cream, always the white. This block here is much wider pieces. This block here, the spikes, are much narrower. So it really gives you an opportunity. I use the fabric line, but it gives you an opportunity to use scraps. Fairly decent sized scraps, as I will address when I'm actually showing you how I made this unit here. I'm using a Tula pink called Roar. I believe, I don't know if it's out of print. Oh no, you can get it still, but this is a Tula pink with the dinosaurs and all of these bright primary colors, as Tula pink is famous for. And then I just fleshed it out with some solids, as you can see here. I used some solids to break up all of the patterns. And then the cream, just a very nice quality muslin background. You could use gray, black, any color background if you wanted to change the look up. But my quilt, I'm not going to be doing the spiky border. I have something else planned for that, but I'll show you as I go along. But this is the project I'm working on now in my sewing room. And again, the pattern is pretty good, pretty concise. It does tell you to cut out the templates. This is out of cardboard. I transpose their pattern pieces onto cardboard because you're needing F, which is this background bit. As you can see, this is F right there. And then it gives you obviously the patterns for the arcs. This outer, the middle border is this arc here. That's D. That's D. And then of course A is this one, and B is this one. Now again, you might think, oh, curved piecing. It really is not very hard when you're using a precise foundation paper piecing pattern like such. It really is not. And I might on one of my next videos demonstrate how you actually with just one pin, how you actually get that beautiful curved piece. But for now, I'm just going to show you an overview. Again, this is just a look over my shoulder of how I made this arc here to have such nice, lovely, precise points. And when I go to put it together, I'll be showing you my version of this quilt. So this is how this simple arch comes on the pattern paper. Now this is from the manufacturer, from the pattern, but you can copy for your own use, for your own pattern. You can copy this onto other copy paper. I know Carol Dones has a lovely copy paper that rips quite easily. This rips quite easily because you're going to having to be ripping all of the sewn pieces. This is foundation paper piecing, and this is how it comes. Now there's you can see that's the front side where we're going to sew, but this here, if you can see it faintly, is the back side where we're going to start be putting our little pieces of fabric. Now, most patterns, when you get a foundation paper piece pattern, they give you a template on how to cut the pieces of fabric that cover each one of these units here, okay? It's not a beginner's task, but once you get into the hang of it, it's quite straightforward, even though you're sewing backwards and upside down and inside out and mirror image and everything. I've always said that, but it's actually quite interesting once you get going into a rhythm. You have to get into a rhythm. Even I believe an experienced quilter would go, if you haven't done it, if you haven't picked it up for a while. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my pattern piece over to the wrong side. Okay, now I can see this. Now again, the patterns will tell you to cut a piece of fabric a certain size, maybe 1.5 inches by 3 inches. I don't do that because to me, somebody said, oh, that's a ton of waste. To me, I would rather not fiddle around with exactly tiny measurements to cover this first piece, which says there, C1, and there we're C2, C3. I just can't be bothered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of fabric and I'm just going to slice a decent size piece. All right. When I do this was my background fabric, the white. When I would do this, I would always get maybe another yard. And people say, oh, that's a waste. Well, to me, it's not. Because I'm not going to fiddle about with a piece that's just not going to fit. Because you have to cover on the back side of this pattern. You can't see it, but I'm covering C1 with that background piece of fabric, okay? Now I'm going to try to hone in a little bit more and show you what I'm going to do. I don't have the right camera equipment, but you can see I've taken this piece and I've laid it on the piece of paper on the back, okay? We're going to be sewing on the front, believe it or not. Now I'm going to take a piece of fabric, another piece of my point. I'm going to slice it off, all right? And I'm going to be putting the pretty side to the pretty side, like so, all right? And I'm going to flip. You could, by all means, if you want to, you could secure the first one with perhaps a little dot of glue or even a pin, but I don't do that. Now there's a cutting line and a stitching line. The cutting line, you have to make sure that your fabric is over the cutting line, all right? So again, I'm generous. I'm very generous with how I'm going to be placing my fabric. So what I do is I'm going to pick my fabric up and I'm going to turn it over, and now I'm going to sew on the line. This is the black side of the fabric, the pattern. I'm going to sew where it says C1. All right, I'm going to start at the what I've done, just turn this a little bit. What I've done is I put my needle down, okay, and I'm going to shorten my stitch length, really, really shorten, and I'm going to start right at that black stitching line, and I'm going to stitch right on C1, right down to the bottom. Now I'll show you this in a minute because now you know you can't see it. I'm going to shorten my stitch right to that corner. So now, as you can see, I've laid the fabric on the back side and I've sewn the fabric on the front side down C1, okay? But when I turn it over like this and I finger press it, I finger press along that seam. This is our first point. Then what I'm going to do is I'm coming over to my little rotating mat here, like so, and I have I do just a regular ruler, because what you do now is on C2, all right, the line C2, I'm just going to lay my little ruler like so, and I'm going to pick up my paper like that, holding it on my ruler like so, and then I'm going to cut with my rotary cutter. I'm going to cut about 1/4 of an inch away. All right, just by all means, if you have this isn't at 1/4, but I can just eyeball the 1/4 inch away, okay? So it looks funky right now. It looks ever so funky, but that's the beginning of my first point. Okay, now I'm going to put that down, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fabric, and I'm going to cut another piece just big enough, with a nice straight line, just big enough to go from that line. And again, you want to be able to cover, you're wanting to be able to cover the cut line up on the top and the cut line on the bottom. And because I've cut this at the green at 1/4 inch, that's my seam line. So I'm laying this next piece of background on my green, okay? I'm flipping it over, and again, coming over to my machine, I'm going to sew, putting my needle down, I'm going to sew on the C2, very short stitch, which makes it for tight seam, and also to be able to rip your papers apart. So now this is what I have, okay? And as you can see, I'll finger press that. This is the beginning of a funky point. You see that? There's a point. But now what I'm going to do, and again, I'm going to come over to my cutting mat, which is right next to me. By all means, if you had an ironing board right next to you, a small iron. So what I'm going to do is you just keep going around the arc. So now with my ruler, I'm going to put it on the next line, the C3, nice and straight. I'm going to lift my paper up, and there's my background, and 1/4 inch away, I'm going to just trim that away, like so, ready for my next point, okay? So this line here is making ready for my next 1/4 inch seam. So again, what I do is I take a scrap. I'm going to use this one. I take a scrap piece that I know will cover. And again, there are templates in most patterns, but I don't do that. I chop off a nice piece of fabric that I know. So it's not like within a tolerance, like, oh, it matches there. Oh, now I do it so I have enough. So there's enough down there, and there's enough there. So I'm lining up my next point. Again, this is on the back side, the wrong side of the pattern, but we're sewing, we're turning it around, we're sewing on the C4 line, needle down, we're sewing on the printed side of our pattern, right down to the black line, and again, there's my 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to finger press that. Again, if you had a small little iron, which I do, but I'd be bothered with that. So then what I do is I have that. I'm gonna, it's like an assembly. I'm gonna flip it over, like so. I'm gonna flip it over. Again, it's just repeating the process, making sure that that's there. And then I'm gonna put my ruler on the next line, which is now this line here, C4, flip my paper over, and cut 1/4 inch. You can start to see 2 points. And again, it's just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. I'm just going to continue doing that the whole way. Take my fabric, I'm covering up, I'm covering up the cut line over here and there. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to sew the next seam, which is my C4, from point down to point, and I'm going to stop right at that sewing line. Pull out. Now, as you can see, I just pull out my threads, because I know that I'm going to be cutting all of these threads. So I'm not really bothered about all the threads. Now, do you see that? There are 2 points emerging. There are 2 points right now. Now, you might be saying, oh, well, this is all wonky. This is all on the bias. This is all stretching. Well, that's the beauty of using up your scraps when you paper piece, foundation paper piece, because these are now all secured in our pattern. You see that? These are all completely secured. It doesn't matter which way the grain is going. So that's why you can use a load of your scraps. Although I must say, not tiny little scraps. Even for something this small, my next bit, my scraps have to be this big, maybe 5 or 6 inches by maybe 2 inches. So that's not necessarily a scrap, but for smaller paper piecing like this, you can get away with scraps, however they're cut. I have to trim this off. So again, I've finger pressed it. I'm going to flip it over like so. I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to flip my paper. I'm going to trim 1/4 of an inch. So now I'm going to take my next piece, nice straight edge, match it up with that seam, as it were. Flip it back over. As you can see, you don't really need to have any pins. You can just hold it. Like so. Pull it out, turn it over, finger press. Okay, it's nice and finger pressed, and then I'm just going to flip it over, get my ruler on C6, flip my paper, cut 1/4 of an inch. And again, you can start to see the points starting to form. Again, I have my piece. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to flip it. I'm going to go to my machine. This is on C6. My background. So you're alternating. Just stopping right at that line. That's important. You don't go past the line. You don't go, in front of the line. You see my 3rd point? Okay. Finger press. Make sure that's okay. Flip it. Put my ruler down on C7. 1/4 of an inch. And there you go. One more piece. Let me see. Here's a bit of a scrap of a pretty pink. I'm going to make sure it's down here and up here. Flip it over. This is C7. Right to that line. Now obviously this is way big. It's fine. We're going to trim it off. Finger press that. Make sure. Flip it over. I'm coming to C8. Trim it off, 1/4 of it. As you can see, it's just a matter of repeating. There's my four points. Yes. One more line, my C13, and trim it. As you can see how quickly I've done that, and now I just have one more background piece. One more background piece. So I take a smaller piece like that, line it up, because that's my 1/4 inch, because I've already cut that 1/4 of an inch. And again, it's always pretty side to pretty side. My background is just either side of the fabric. But as you can see, it's just is just place, it's my last one. Now, usually what I'll do on my last one, I'll just leave it, because now, as you can see, there's my beautiful points, okay? But now you're like, well, how do we get the actual arc to make the arc? So what we do is the back side, if you can see, there's a black line right there, and then there's a faint gray line on the top. The black line is my stitching line. The gray line on the top and the bottom is my cutting line. So I turn it over like so. Pull this up a little bit more, like that. All right, so the gray line is my cutting line. Let me just put that, yeah, right that. So very carefully, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, with my rotary cutter, I'm gonna cut on the gray line. And that's the bottom one. That gets rid of all of those, most of those threads. I have some threads left, that's okay. I'm gonna turn it over, like so, and I'm gonna cut again, making sure everything is nice and straight. I'm gonna cut again on the top, gray cutting line. Get rid of all that, like so. Get rid of that. And then, oops. And then there's a side one. Like so, be careful, go slowly. And then this one here. And then get rid of all of that. And lo and behold, there, right there, with enough seam allowance for the 1/4 inch. The way the pattern's made, there's a 1/4 inch that when I go to sew this into my curved unit, which I'll be showing you in one of my next videos, how easy it is, you won't cut the points off. That is the beauty of foundation paper piecing. This is a PS. I just wanted to show you the back. This obviously has the paper still stitched onto it, as you can see. So what I do is I will actually take a pin and I'll just score, just randomly, I'll just score the paper, and then that way it peels away from the stitching, as well as the pin score. Makes it just a little bit easier. It's a bit of a pain to take the paper off, and it's a bit of a messy job if you just throw it on the floor and gather it all up. But it's the beauty of actually getting these precise points. You do need to have it foundation paper pieced.